Hello, everybody. Give me a second here to get everything warmed up and working. I've got to get to my now on one page here. It says I'm broadcasting, and on another, hmm, but on my so I could be broadcasting, and I may not be broadcasting. I have no idea if I'm really live right now. So let's give another. Let's give this another. Let's try this again. Okay, I restarted the stream with the YouTube web page up. Usually the YouTube web page bumps up and says I'm streaming, but I see what's going on now. My YouTube is not set to my guitar channel, and now that I'm on my guitar channel, yes, I am live. So hello, everybody, up here in the corner. Me, Mr. Mind's Eye Visual Guitar Method. Well, there I am, right? In Ultimate Echo. So, all right, I've got my chat page bumped up in the corner here for anybody who joins in and wants to ask a question. Go ahead and do that. And hopefully I'll glance over once in a while and see that and respond to your question. But today, what we're going to do here is, you know what we need to do? We need to retitle this video, because that's not the title. Let's get that changed. Give me a second to get to the keyboard here and type. Okay. All right. So our preliminary title today, provided I don't get some different questions, other questions here, is scale names versus modal names, and the confusion of naming conventions. Just to get all poetic there, I guess. But we've got a helicopter going by. I don't think you guys could probably hear that. But anyways, the confusion between basically when you see a scale, like a scale shape, and it's called Phrygian, but you can't equate that to actually making your own Phrygian, right? Backing track. So, or playing along with one that's already pre-made on YouTube. Even you can't even you don't see how those relate to each other. So let's try to relate them today. So what we need to do, actually, even before we draw a scale or a shape, let's go over like some basics here, so we're all on the same page. Move some things here. All right, sorry for all that. Okay, let's write down some note names here. We're going to write down a scale, and when we write down the scale, we're going to skip some boxes, because in between certain notes, there are other notes, and in between some notes, there aren't any notes. In particular, that would be the E note and the F note. And between the B and the C note, and you see that leaves us a key code out of 12 possibilities there in between these lines. The 12 notes before they repeat. You have a key code. Key code is 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4 whole steps. And if we make some kind of marks there over the notes we're not going to talk about today, just to keep it simple, the C sharp, D flat, D sharp, E flat, F sharp, G flat, G sharp, A flat, A sharp, B flat. So it's a sharp of the note that's behind you and your flat to the note ahead of you. You'll notice that the picture becomes similar to a piano keyboard. So if you have a little keyboard handy, you can always reference. If you ever get confused, you look over at your keyboard to refresh you until you don't need to do that anymore. Anyways, so you can see here now it's getting more clear and easy to understand that there's a scale. And this is basically do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and then you're back to do. So that's, boring basic kid stuff to many rockers, rocking guitarists out there, but you really want to actually stop for a second and remember that that's all the great music. A big large chunk of it is made out of this simple concept right here, that do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It's just that this is the ground level explanation of it all, the way to get a foundation, and it's not telling you actually how to make any music, so it's kind of boring. But you got to get through this. Remember to just get solid on a couple concepts here, and then you move forward real quick. Anyways, so what we get out of this is what we call the major scale. When you sing do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and it's pleasing and it leads back into the do, well, that's why we call that one the major scale. In this scale, there's also a minor scale. You've heard of the natural minor, and if you start on one of these notes here, which we'll maybe go over later, drew an arrow to it right there, it's the natural minor scale. But let's not get confused so far, because this is really easy to get confusing. Let's say that when you play a scale, like play do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, you've played the major scale, but that's just a scale and it's not music. So let's change that up and say that we're going to emphasize the C note by playing like a C on a bass guitar or on a low keyboard, or a piano note is going to drone out a C, or a C chord, a chord made up of the 1, the 3, and the 5 here after the C note, which would be a major, third, and the 5th, which is, chords always got a 5. And chords use one of the thirds. The flat is minor, and the regular third is major. To know all that, you need to write down here root to understand intervals that I just talked about, so I don't lose anybody here. A lot of people who know this are going to be bored and skip off this lesson. Just remember, this is really for beginners here today. Because, well, I just thought I'd start there today. 4, flat 5, 5, sharp 5. No need to ask why the numbers are weird or anything at this point. Just know about you're going to hear these 12 intervals talked about all the time in music talk. when people are trying to express musical ideas. So it's real helpful to just understand how it's laid out. There's 2 2s, 2 3s, a 4, 3 5s, a 6, 2 7s. You can stare at it a lot. I went over this a lot, and eventually it just is second nature to me now. But it was about a year of always going back to this note until it became something I just kind of remembered. So because there's a little bit of a code here, it does take a little bit of time. So you write it down as a note like I did and have a reference and keep it in your guitar case when you go places, or always study it at home till you get out of the woodshed there. Anyways, so we've got, you can see here then the E is on a third, so it's a major chord. Anyways, so someone plays a C major chord, and then you start noodling around anywhere on these do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti note choices. Stay away from that flat 2, the flat 3rd, the flat 5th, of course, and the sharp 5th and the 7th to sound inside that chord. You're going to be creating what's called the major scale, and that starts from here. Now, here's the thing. You can also, though, instead of emphasizing this note or the chord that comes from this note while you jam in this scale, let's say you decided to instead emphasize this based on the 2 of the scale. You see the scale goes root, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It doesn't use any of those funky flat, 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 sharp, flat. You can even call just to make it simple, to keep it all easy to understand for as a beginner, you can say flat 2, flat 3, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7. But it is better thought of later on as a sharp 5th, an alteration to the 5th. The 5th is very powerful. That's why it kind of steals the limelight from the 6th there, and those notes around it sound like you're doing something to that 5th. When that 5th gets replaced, it's more likely sounding like a sharpened alteration to this than a flattened alteration of that. Just so you know. If you include, I think, this note, you might say there's a flat 6th in the chord if you include it with that, but whatever. That's not what we're talking about now, but just so you could understand a little bit about intervals really quick anyways and see something kind of neat there. So let's say you started from this D, the 2, and you make this chord there, the D, the F, and the G. Well, let's take a note there that if we now say that this is the root, we would have to put root here. This is 2, 2, 3. F falls on the first 3, which is a flat 3rd, then the major 3rd. So we have a minor chord being built up here, and you can see why D is minor. And all these have names. So, E ends up, if you theory it out like we just did or analyze it, E is minor, F is major, G is a major chord, and if you use a 7th, it's got an unusual flatted 7th, so it's called the dominant 7th because that kind of makes the chord a little more standout or unstable than just a regular major chord. Just something, because you'll always hear that come up, dominant 7th, and now you just got a little bit of an idea why. You don't have to grasp that right there. It's totally cool. You can move on. The A becomes a minor, and the B becomes this weird diminished chord, which we don't have to worry about at this point in the game. Learn that way later, because you won't use it very much in your beginning music explorations. So, other than is just using it as a note in your scale. But so we start on the 2, the 3, the 4. So we can label these, since we just went over what the chord flavors are. We can label this major, minor, minor, major. I like to put a 7 in there, small m for minor, and then a D for, just even write dim in there for diminished. So you'll just know that note is something to work on later on. Anyways, so now when you hear about 1, 4, 5, and you're in the key of C, you know, the 1, the 4, and the 5. It's the C, the F, and the G. Look at where the pattern is on your guitar, how it's C, F, and G, where they are. Now you know exactly where a 1, 4, 5 is located, the basics of it, in any key. Put where the C note is, that if they say it's a 1, 4, 5 in this key, put the note that you would have, the C note in that pattern, move it up to the note that they say. But anyways, if that doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. Drifting off topic, it's a live lesson here, just talking, rambling music theory here in the way I understand it. So, the way I get around throwing around musical ideas and creating new things and understanding what other people are talking about. So we have, we could start on this 2 here, which would be the minor, and these all have names to separate them because this minor doesn't sound exactly like this minor, and of course minor doesn't sound like major, and this major doesn't sound like that major. They are all a little bit different. They're called modes, and they have different moods. So right up here, give yourself a note that, oops, went a little ahead of myself there. Write down that modes equal moods. And why don't we write down here what our modes are? We've got I for Ionian, a D equals Dorian. You can write that down on the side here, like an I, and then, equals, and write it all out. But I think you guys can get that real quick in today's lesson. P for Phrygian, however the hell you say that. I think I'm going to bitch about that every time I say it. IDP, L for Lydian, M for Mixolydian, A for Aeolian, and L for Locrian. But we already have an L. There's a problem. We have an L for Lydian and an L for Locrian. So what I do here, since Locrian is kind of like the one that isn't really used very much, I put an LX because an X is easy to fit right there. Gives it this little extra shape right there that easily denotes it as not the note choice you want for something in Lydian. So, so LX. All right, so if you map out your fretboard and make the simple square box pattern that is always there, you're going to find that you can plug these factors in really simple and easy because they're always in the same spot, in the same part of the shape. It's just the way the geometry works. Eventually you'll see how it makes sense, but if it's seems impossible, don't worry, it's just kind of like how the pieces end up linking together, and they just stay the same unless you tune your guitar differently. Then you can change all this. But in standard tuning, you'll soon see why standard tuning is used, because it creates a pretty handy and easy to use pattern that is easily traceable all across the fretboard. So the whole fretboard opens up as your instrument of noise versus one little scale spot. So getting back to that was a nice little segue there. Getting back to the original inception of this video, what's the deal with these names of these scale shapes? So we know that if we emphasize this note, the 2 in the scale, it's going to be a Dorian sound. It's a minor chord, and it's going to be Dorian. Let's say we choose the 3 of any scale. This note will change in here if we change the key. But in this example, E will be the 3rd, and the 3rd is always Phrygian. And it's minor, based on a minor. So we've got a major Lydian here, and so we emphasize these chords to create these sounds, but we're playing drawing from the exact same scale. So the rules are, if you are using this particular scale, this is what will happen. You can interchange this line here with any note. Okay, move it up and down 12 different places. and all this other stuff will stay the same relative to this. One helpful thing to do from here is, now that you know how to manipulate these moods, this gives you the ability to manipulate them, but you still don't know exactly what they are until they're all in your ear, and it still might be harder to categorize these unless someone gives you an initial basic idea of what these modal mood choices are. So you always want to have this note available if you haven't already gotten this on some other lesson here. We're going to go back to that page I was on a second ago. But anyways, just write down here. Basically Ionian is your standard. Basically, there's right down here is major. I'm still on the page. Okay, so just write down major, and then we're going to write down 3 here for minor. Okay. And we're leaving the odd man out there. Locrian is always a question scale. That's like Locrian is an enigma scale. If you have a song about enigma or something that doesn't resolve, use Locrian. So we're leaving that out today. And that leaves us 6 moods. And the neat thing about these 6 moods is they're balanced. And the geometry on your fretboard even has a balance point that once you know, you can just switch around so easy it's not even funny. But anyways, I'm going to write an A or an I. If you remember, I for Ionian and A for Aeolian. The Ionian is why don't you call this your natural major? So you can think of Aeolian when they say natural minor. You kind of get what they're actually talking about here. They just say major because major is just so regular, but they're not really indicating in the naming conventions that Ionian is the balanced of the major and Aeolian is the balanced or the natural of the minor. So Ionian natural major, Aeolian natural minor. So you'll see that with the, if you want more of a buoyant sound, you can, with these regular happy, right, here's always a smiley face, and here's always a frown face. Now, we're going to make the eyes the eyes are just kind of neutral here, right? Now, if you want to go happy and a little bit even more buoyant here, we're going to raise up them eyebrows. Lydian is more buoyant and we're going to write it above Ionian. So write yourself a note, Lydian. Lydian is going to be considered a little bit, it's used more sparingly because it's just got a more of a floaty feeling, better used for a song about dreams or flying or angels. It's kind of got that Lydian sound, and you can mix it with other modes that it really sounds cool. So definitely tons of uses, and you want to know Lydian, and you might even know a couple of artists you've heard associated with Lydian scales, like some rock and guitarists out there. I'll just keep nameless just to keep it kind of, not too judgmental, I guess, or pinning anyone on anything that they might not find that cool. Now you want to twist that. You want to go a little bit more serious, get a little closer to minor with your major, then you're going for Mixolydian. And look at this. This is kind of neat. This is the 1, this is the 4, this is the 5. You've heard of that before, right? 1, 4, 5. Pretty neat, huh? It's in the realm of the blues. That's where you've heard 1, 4, 5 before, but this is has some connection to that, but we're not going to worry about that right now. We're just going to need to get a make quick sense of the moods of modes, so that if you can just kind of organize them a bit. This is what we're doing. We're just putting a light organization into these ideas, and once you can organize things and put them into like a little code sheet, it becomes really easy to draw information quickly. You have basically a 1, 2, 3 choice, and our minds tend to work really good with 1, 2, 3 ABC 1, 2, 3 choices. Okay, so with minor, here are your three choices. We have the frowny face for minor. We have a minor a little bit lighter than aeolian, a little light at the end of that tunnel, so we're going to raise up the eyebrows. And we have one a little darker, so we're going to lower the eyebrows. So it's kind of like, with these modes, it's kind of like your face. The happy one is always the major modes are always your smile, and the minor modes are always your frown. There's 3 frowns and 3 smiles, and they're differentiated by the mood as expressed by your eyebrows. You're in just a regular kind of happy mood, generally happy mood. You're in even more elated, like, oh my gosh, it's my birthday today. And you're feeling like I'll get them back. I'm a prankster or something mixed, there's Mixolydian. And then you're feeling generally sad, but there's some light at the end of the tunnel. You're in a Dorian kind of mood. And you can, when you sit down at your guitar, you become one of those pick up an instrument and really become, that instantly expressive player, because you think to yourself, how was my day? Yeah, boy, there was that really cool thing that happened at lunch, and boy, there's that real hopeful thing I got going on, and you're just feeling really super buoyant, even more buoyant than regular. You want to jam something in Lydian, and or it was something, you've been depressed, but there's some light at the end of the tunnel. You play something in Dorian. You'll really be expressing your inner emotion. Okay, the final one here is that name that I always hate to say. So I'll leave it for you to say it, or I'll just say it. Oh, I used to say Phrygian, and I think I got it right now. Phrygian. Like refrigerator, I guess. Phrygian, you can even say that. Phrygiana. Oh my gosh, I didn't say that. Okay, so Phrygian chicken. No. Phrygian is more serious sounding than Aeolian. It gets kind of like in the vein, I guess, sort of in certain contexts, you can make it sound kind of Spanish. You can make it sound kind of Egyptianish. It's just, you can make it sound like metal. And then you can make other little tweaks to it that really, give it that metal edge, which you can learn like later. And you can do that with all these. You can make little alterations. You'll hear like, I don't know. Let's say they said, Lydian flat something scale. Just say that you heard that, you'd know what to do, because you take the whatever note they said and you make it flat. Okay, so if it needs that, you'll, the reason that you'll hear explanations about these scales that, like, well, this one, Lydian is this because it has this special note, but yeah, that's why it is, but you don't really need to know that to jam in it and to understand it as, a quick bag of emotional tricks, a quick bag of quick ability to tap into your emotions on your instrument. So you want to write down this for yourself, so you can just keep going back to that, so we don't have to kind of dwell on it too much longer here for too many extra minutes. That 28 minutes into the video, not too bad today. I can go for hours on here. Haven't even picked up a guitar yet in the video. Anyways, so you'll see these scales. Now a guitar teacher tells you, well, this is, learn, your C major scale, and maybe they'll show you this scale. Show you a shape, right? And it'll look like this. It'll look like this and this. And you see this shape. Oh, yeah. And they call that, you might hear that called G Mixolydian. You could also call this shape well, you could just call this shape Mixolydian, And you could call this shape a, if you want to use every note on this page, you could theoretically call this a, well, I'll tell you about that in a second. With either one of these, you have to leave out 2 notes. I'll show you that. But anyways, you can call this a Phrygian scale, based off of this note. If this is your root note, or your chord is ringing out this note, a note from this note, then it's that note, Phrygian scale. If you have this note ringing out from this scale, and you play this scale, you're soloing in this scale, you're going to sound like you're soloing in Mixolydian. Am I right there? Yeah, what's right above the 1? The 5, right? What's right below it? The 4, right? Mm-hmm. So, thinking about some things to say. Well, okay, so, in that regard, like let's say I start on this note, well, then I'm kind of leaving out these 2 notes, because a mode, in its basic explanation, you're playing the scale in between those notes. I'll say like from D to D on the piano for this second note here of the C major scale. C major on the piano is all the white keys, okay? So if you take the second note, the middle white key in between the 2 individual black keys. Remember, there's 3 black keys, then 2 black keys, and that's all there is. If you take the note in between those 2 black keys, that's the D, and you play that note in relation to all the other white keys, you're playing in Dorian. But the basic way they tell you is that just the scalar information, if you play all the notes starting from do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, well, you're playing the 1, the do, the Ionian. But if you play re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, re, then you're playing D. You're playing the Dorian, because you're playing in between from the second note to the second note of the scale. If you play from the third note to the third note of the scale, that scale could get named whatever starts from the third note. But music isn't made of scales, so it doesn't jump out at you when you. So then you'll learn the scale, or your guitar teacher says, well, time to learn modes, here's this shape and this shape and this shape. That's why you leave there going, oh, I know modes. What do I do with this? Let's learn some Van Halen. And it goes on from there, and that's what I did. So, because Van Halen was musical, and that's where it is, my friends. It's musical. You want to make music, and you'd probably be interested in this because it would be your own music, and you knew this like new secret way to do it if they would have just told this to you a little bit more sensibly. So, yes, it's true that they start from point A to point B, but that's not really how to think about this musically. Musically is play the chord that you can derive right from this chart of information here. Play the chord that starts on one of these letters, and you'll get that mode by playing the rest of the key as it exists. So you would stick with the pattern that's created with all the white keys on the piano, but you play this note, this white key, or you play this white key, which would be the white key in between the first of the 3 black keys, if that makes any sense. There's your 3 black keys, and these are your 2 black keys that you'll see on any piano keyboard. And how does that work on your fretboard? Well, here's your C. See these half steps right here? The E and the F and the B and the C. Well, every scale has those, no matter what note you start on and how these notes get jumbled around. There's always the 3 and the 4 that are together.
in the do, re, mi, and fa are always together, and so is ti and do. So that means that there's a standard order that never changes. There's always these half steps, and because of that, this cool thing happens on the guitar fretboard. B and C fall on the top, and E and F fall on the bottom of this perfect square of 4 notes. And remember, folks, once you got your 4 notes down, you're only missing 1, 2, and 3 other notes. Boom. Because 3 and 4 make 7, and 7 notes make a major scale. So now I'm on to the same thing I go over in every lesson. So, your square of notes, which is if you see a square somewhere on the fretboard, in one of the scales your guitar teacher shows you, you've got your Ti, Do, Mi, Fa box in the key of C. That's B and C, E and F. Why the key of C keeps coming up? Because if you use any other key, the way it lines up is you use a sharp or flat note, which just throws an extra bit of information into the loop and can confuse beginners. So most music theory explanations will always use the key of C, which you've probably noticed going around the internet and reading a lot of theory stuff, as you should if you're trying to learn this stuff and try to find something method that jumps out to you. You will see that most use the key of C because it's no sharps, no flats, the way it lines up. And why not A? Well, it actually was A when it was created, and they used the natural minor scale as the beginning, as like the main focus scale, and then the major scale was like the other group. Well, as music got more modern and advanced, people tended to shift towards the major scale as being like the primary, like, hey, this is the scale we like, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, not la, ti, do, fa, sol, re, mi, ti, la, la, ba, ba. So anyways, yeah, so it eventually changed after it was already created to the major scale, which lined up with the note C instead of the note A. So that's the way I understand that happened. And why are there 12 notes instead of 24 or 53 or some other ungodly number of notes? Because 12 gives a nice distinction between notes. The more notes you make, and there's thousands of notes between the octave. There's just literally millions of divisions. But the greater the division, the less you'll notice. So, when I played that for you on another lesson, I guess that'll prompt me to pick up my guitar here. Pick up my guitar and play just like yesterday. Because it's Sunday. Whoa, lots of distortion noise because I have it set to some distorted tone. Here's an example of millions of notes between an octave. Here we go. All right. Like, so for example, we could play this note, and then this note, and then this note, and this note, and this note, and this note. Too many notes. Not enough distinction. And so when you divide them up as they are divided here, you get a nice division in between notes. There is some times when there's some divisibility at 24. There's some noticeability in between notes, but it just gets it just simply adds another deeper layer of complexity to the music and less discernibility. So you would basically, in between these two notes, it would be this. So let's go up the scale 24 times here. Too many notes. And, 24, if you are into 24 scale note music, you surely disagree and think it's awesome and okay, and that's cool too. Um, but being that probably the big lot of the audience here is into 12 note systems, you can see why there's 12 notes now and not even 24. And most likely not 33, and definitely not thousands of different notes. Why there's 12. And there could be less, but then there'd be just less choices, and maybe it wouldn't make each jump wouldn't make so much sense. There wouldn't be this neat emotional pattern of modes that comes out. But maybe with like 13 notes, something else would happen. But usually, even divisions seem to work out mathematically well, because that's all this is wavelengths that can be measured, and these measurements usually work out as whole numbers. I think it works out something like that. It's just the divisions. When the math is like pleasing, it's also seemingly good math. Is what's typically pleasing to people in their ears. Anyways, so C, D, E, F, G. Before I end up talking up saying things that may, be theoretically, just a guess or not proven or whatever. So, um, so since we start here, what note is there? So we've got, well, we know that that's the 5, which is a G. That's an F. This must be an E. There's a half step there, so that must be the E. As is above, so is below. So if we have a square here, we have always have half a square, because the E is always the same. So E and F are here, E and F are there. Meaning E. So E is the third of, we derive this shape from the key of C. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We derive it from the key of C. We've got all the whole notes, the white keys shaded in there. And we're starting on the E. So since this pattern simply starts on the E, not even considering making any music, not anybody playing a chord, no one is relating any of these notes to a low E note, it is, therefore, it becomes, in definition, a Phrygian scale, because you're playing from the E note in the key of C. You're basically going up a scale of notes, but you started on the E. So your ear, without any other chord to relate to, tries to relate all these notes to the key of, to the very first note played. If you accidentally give a little extra emphasis to the C, maybe it starts to sound like the C major scale as you're going up. And that's where it gets wishy-washy. It's just a scale. It's not music, and you don't know what's going on with Phrygian, even though your teacher says, oh, you want to learn Phrygian? Here, start with E, and here it is. There's your Phrygian scale. Go have fun. And you don't have any emotional ability. Emotionally expressive ability is what you're looking for. So what you should know just basically using this scale is that if you have some way to create a background chord, or you go to YouTube and now in modern times type in E Phrygian scale, you will make much more sense of this scale with the proper background key or chord playing. Okay. Then you begin to noodle around and do whatever the F you want with this scale. And seriously, do whatever comes to your mind and play what you start feeling from inside yourself. And that's where you come out. You can't be afraid of what you sound like. Even if in the beginning you make some mistakes, you feel like you're just kind of boring. You don't have any your melodies kind of sound bland or something. Don't worry about it. That all morphs as you just noodle around and get through this and have fun doing it while you understand what you're actually doing. So that's the value of learning it this way. You find a backing track or make this a chord, and then that makes more sense. Now, using these low notes, you could even choose this one as the chord, and we know the F in C major is the 4, and the 4 equals Lydian. It's a major chord. You could even have these chords switch in your backing track, and when this chord switches, if it stays here long enough and pronounced enough, it'll take this same scale you're playing and make you sound like you've changed your scale and you haven't done anything, but you'll sound like you're playing in Lydian. But usually, music works like whatever the first chord played, you can jump to this chord, but you keep going back here, and it'll have a predominantly Phrygian sound, but it'll sound cool while you go here, while this chord plays, and everything has a totally different sound, and then goes back to a dark place. Kind of neat. So we can experiment with that, or just play an F Lydian backing track on YouTube, and using this scale pattern, it's the same exact notes. You're doing nothing different. You'll sound like you're in F Lydian, and then it'll be up to how you choose to get through the scale. Do you take a weird pattern through there and play this note, that note, that note, that note, and that note, and see how it sounds? Do you go down here and then go at an angle? Do you walk up and then do some speed picking around this part and then play a little chord or something? All based on what the rhythm is doing. And that way of thinking becomes your playing. And finally here, and you can position this scale around using any of these notes as the root note to get the specific modal sound you're looking for, but it's easy to think in these terms of these top bass notes here, the E string, Sorry if the guitar's kind of louder than my voice here. I always hate when videos don't have their volume balanced, and mine probably surely doesn't here. My point being here, so if we move over to the G note here, G is the 5. The 5 is, it's funny, it's the, it's the 5th, and it's the Mixolydian dominant 7th chord. So it's got its own cool little sound. What's our Mixolydian mood? Our Mixolydian mood is a little spicier than Ionian. Sounds kind of cool. So well, that wasn't anything there, but try this. I try to emphasize Mixolydian there by keeping on going back to that low G, adding in that flat 7th note just to emphasize G and a flat 7. If you heard the bad note in there, I graced over that note, and it didn't sound very good, but I quickly slid on into a good note and sort of tried to recover there, if you picked that up. Anyways, so yeah, that's playing, and when I was jamming there, I actually was visualizing the shape. I know what's just up from here. You have basically the Aeolian looking pentatonic, which is parked just up from here. This is your bent box here, when it comes to our box concept, you can see it follows in the rules. Here's the broken box because of the B string shift. Here's its the next box, which always connects to the corner of the lower box. So corner to corner here, we find our mid-grouped box. We call it mid-grouped, which is a word I just made up right now, because it's grouped on the middle two. In this, there's a angle of boxes, two angles of boxes going this way on your fretboard, just like there's a group of 2 black keys and a group of 3 black keys on a piano keyboard. And the first angle uses the outside, middle, and outside pair of strings to create a nice box pattern there. B string shift screws it up, so it screws up the corner connect right there, and sometimes it screws up your host here, and he draws the box in the wrong shape. But lucky he uses pencil as a rule, and you can erase all your mistakes. So, all right, I'm still on screen here. No one watching. My channel is getting unpopular. Yeah, I never make any videos, so I don't blame anybody. Plus, I get on here rambling on about the same old stuff all the time. Maybe I just give all this stuff up. I don't know if I'm wasting my time here. I think it's cool. I think everybody can use this. Probably. I think this is what I was looking for in the beginning. Anyways, there's your other square of notes that can link up all your different pentatonic boxes and get you understanding the fretboard and really quick, but make that note list, and there's how to use it and kind of see the modes as they appear. Experiment for yourself. Choose a different starting note here and leave that blank here so you can always scribble in pencil. Write the rest in pen and leave that one blank so you write in pencil what your notes are. And if you want to go into the key of F, you write F. Skip a note G. Skip a note A. Then you would have to write an A sharp or B flat right there. And then C, on and on. So that's the deal why scale shapes have a name like Phrygian, because they're using the basic explanation of a scale version of a mode that's not musical. It's just simply literal. If you start on a scale, but you need a way to name the fact that you're going from E to E, then you chose this, you give it a little special name. And that's the special name is, for the 3 is Phrygian, and for the 4 is Lydian, and for the 5 is Mixolydian. Those are the special names. But music doesn't really ever consider just going from playing a scale in between 2 notes. Soloists don't tend to do that. That would be like wearing chains in the mall. Be like going to the mall and chaining yourself to the center island and wondering why you can't get to the stores like everybody else can. Right? So why give yourself those chains? So that's the basic explanation is being in the mall. I guess it's not making sense anymore, but the basic way is to consider like that's the low chord. You're dealing with this pool, this selection of notes. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And you want to emphasize this chord instead of this chord or this chord, the natural major or the natural minor. Natural major, natural minor. Natural minor is always the 6th. So you don't want to you let's say you do want to emphasize one of these modal things, you emphasize the chord, I guess is the short, quick way to say this. So if I played this E chord, it would be a minor chord. If I played this F chord, I'd want to play a major chord. And, from the G, you can see it says the 7th chord. That's a major chord. And so Yeah, we have the 3 spaces is going to give us a major. When there's 2 spaces, like from D or from E, you have 2 spaces to the third note, or I mean the second note. Then you have, if you skip a note, is what I should say, and you only find it's only 2 spaces away, it's minor. If you skip your note, and it takes 1, 2, 3 steps to get there, it's major. You can see that right here in the standard listing of intervals. If I leave 2 spaces, I'm on a minor third. If I leave 3 spaces from my root note, the starting point, 1, 2, 3, I'm on a major third. Major's happy, flat third's minor. All right, here's my hour-long lesson on my Sunday here. Got cars to work on. I got another channel where I'm trying to be a driving instructor. I thought maybe that could get some views for my hometown, trying to get people to pass road tests. That can get a lot of views, but I got to make those videos. Got to go parallel park for a while. So if you would like to see me pulled away from those endeavors and say, no, man, keep your focus here because I want you to teach me what I need to know to get through this crap, then link up to my Patreon page or just throw money in my hat, which is like saying thanks with 50 cents or $1 or something by checking out my PayPal link, which I think should be down below. If it's not, let me know in the comments or something. And so, yeah, I appreciate everyone who does watch and makes it a point to get me to stay here and make more videos and allocate more time to this instead of just a random Sunday when I think I have time, when the weather's good and I stop utilizing time to go ride my e-bike, because that's another thing I like to do on my one day off that I don't have time to do anything on. So, that's not to mention the cars, working on maintaining the cars, doing laundry, classic cars, everything else that everybody else does. So, enjoy yourselves. I thank you for watching this video, and let me know if you ever have any questions. I definitely want to get some questions so I could have some fodder for more videos. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. We've got Facebook things in the way here, and that's making it so I can't hit exit. So what we're going to do is stop streaming.